Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa. We have been trying, well, I have been trying for, no, not an hour, like maybe 40 minutes, half an hour to try and get onto StreamYard where we could do our live recording. It would not allow me on StreamYard to meet the Australians there. They were all there waiting for me. However, I was not. So eventually I said, okay, meet on Zoom. And after again, much ado, here I am on Zoom and we're pre-recording. So this is second prize. We'll have to do live shows, but we're going to premiere this with I love you Australians. You know that. You guys have been very close to my heart since this channel began. And I've been looking forward to doing this round table. And unfortunately, Andrew won't be able to join us. And I'm not sure what's happened to Joanne, actually. She was supposed to be here. I hope she's okay, though. So we have with us beautiful Rachel Vaughan, Kerri Saint, and Doug McIntyre. None of them are strangers to this channel. Each and every one of you are doing amazing stuff in Australia. You know, Australia, as I said, is very close to my heart. And I realized very quickly how disgusting things were in Australia with kids and trafficking and stuff like that a long time ago. Um, Obviously, and what the common thread here is I'm seeing is Commonwealth, Australia, Commonwealth, South Africa, and now Commonwealth, Canada. And more am I seeing as well the atrocities that have been happening in Canada and how many of those kids have been taken in to experiments, the Montauk experiments, stuff like that. A lot of the worst atrocities there have been actually committed on Canadian soil and with Canadian kids. So that's another avenue I want to take a walk down as well. I want to say dive down the rabbit hole. I'm so tired of rabbit holes. We're walking down avenues now. So, welcome, guys. It's such a pleasure to have you. And I'm going to go ladies first, Doug. And I'm sure you'll be good with that. And Rachel, just maybe let's start off with you. If you each can just give us little feedback on yourself, where you at, just a intro, short intro, although as I said, you are well known on this channel, but for those who haven't met you yet, yeah, tell us a little bit
Okay.
about what are you doing and where you at right now on your journey.
All right. So those who haven't seen me before, basically I'm a whistleblower. I was SRA MKUltra as a child, and I've spent the last 20 years basically, doing everything I possibly can. I went through the whole process with authorities. That didn't get me anywhere. Apart from I did get a victim of crime compensation payment in 2024. Eventually, it took a very long time. I went through every single authority, every department that you could possibly go through federally and locally and state-wise. And I went also overseas. I mean, I petitioned and made contact with others overseas to try and get this out there. And that's how it finally did get out there with interviews. Um, I'm still going through that process, but I'm healing in a lot of ways. So I've also come out as the psychic that I am. I was trained under MKUltra Theta psychic programming. So I've had a lot of those gifts brought out, not in the best possible way. Nobody should ever be used in that way as a child. But I like to think that I use what I've got now to help people, and it also works against those that weaponize me, because what I'm doing is I'm going out, I'm showing I'm not broken. I can still fight, and I can do it in multiple different dimensions. And I'm
Right.
actually flourishing. I'm actually able to show that I'm actually happy now, whereas before I was scared too. And it's interesting, the more I do that, the more I realize that they really are losing whoever you want to
Right.
describe them as,
Oh,
they are crawling on the ground and they are in damage mode. Absolutely.
right. I love that because I think, what you were saying there is the happier you are, the more they lose their power and their control over you.
Yep.
And that is absolutely. I advocate for that all the time. We
Mm,
set ourselves free by finding joy in life, joy
mm,
in the little things. There's always something to be joyful about, whether it's the little miraculous flower on the pavement
mm,
or something massive like a child or a grandchild being born or something. Joy could be found in so many ways. And when we allow and we give ourselves permission, and especially I think you survivors, Rachel, you guys have been through so much. None of us who haven't been there can even comprehend it. So I know it must be such a difficult task to even learn how to begin to trust again. Who is good, who is bad? As a kid, no one could trust adults because every adult was as corrupt as the other one. So, you guys had to learn how to fend for yourselves on every level. So I have so much respect for the paths you are all walking because I see you all and I always smile because it's really beautiful to see the healing journey and still every day be faced because of the path you've chosen to be a whistleblower, all of you, every day still faced with that horror of the
mm,
past and not just yours, but everyone else's as well. So you
mm,
carry it, not just yours, where you can go into your little room and heal.
mm.
It's for the world as well. So it's almost like repeated, repeated, repeated. Takes a lot of courage. So thank you all for that. It's such a incredible healing journey that you're taking us on. And as a healer, I for sure see that. It's beautiful. Thank you. Kerri, over to you, sweet honey.
Yeah.
Your
Oh,
little
well,
pants with your pant-sized dog and your pant-sized little body.
I
But
know.
that has got absolutely
My
no
pint-sized
pint-sized
car,
soul.
I drive a Mini, so, my pint-sized dog, I tell ya, don't let that fool you. She might be little, but she's mighty, I tell ya. She's so
Like you.
she's very bossy. So yeah, no, she's have you seen her, Rachel? She's a little she's a Yorkie poo. So she's a York it's so cute. Yorkie poo. So she's just adorable, but she's such a character. a Yeah. But great name. Yeah. yeah, so I called her Matilda. So I had to give her a really good Aussie name. So she got Matilda. So then she loves me singing the song Waltzing Matilda to her. So she's very musically yeah, as soon as I pull out the guitar and stuff, she's right there wanting to listen to music, which is great. And we talk about, little things to distract us and bring a bit of beauty in. Matilda's been that for me because I lost my son who passed away 8 years ago. I had his dog for those last 8 years, and she just passed away last year. So
Mm.
that was really hard. So getting Matilda has been helpful and, kind of moving through that grief and loss there because it wasn't just about my dog. It was my son's dog and that connectedness there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Yeah.
no. Yeah, she might be little,
Animals
but
are amazing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. She's
Like you,
she,
Kerri. Like
I
you.
don't know. She's so switched on. That's all I can say. So, but anyway,
You're
yeah,
speaking about
but
yourself.
yeah, I
It's
know.
beautiful.
Yeah, cheeky as, but you know,
Well,
she's
tell us
very
a little bit
sensitive.
about.
I
Sorry,
say she's
carry
very
on.
sensitive. She puts on this big bravado that she's not, but she is. So I know that's me.
Exactly. Isn't it amazing the healing with animals? And Joanne as well, who's got the kangaroo healing sanctuary. I mean, I know after spending a lot of time chatting with Joanne and working with the kangaroos as well. I mean, what a special thing it is and it doesn't matter what animal, every human, we all have our preferences. And dogs, I have found are just incredible, especially, as a healer as well.
Mm,
People coming off drugs or addictions, especially drugs. The minute
mm,
they have a little dog, especially the little dogs,
yeah,
the Yorkies I
yeah,
found are popular, and the little Scotties, the little square
yeah,
square
yeah,
ones. For
yeah.
some reason, are very popular with
Yeah.
people that are in recovery. I don't know if it's a conscious thing, but that's just what
Yeah,
I've
no.
noticed.
Yeah,
And
no.
they are incredible to see
Yeah, yeah.
how tuned in they are
Oh, she is.
to humans here and
Mm.
support animals. In fact, I did a show with Beverly Rhodes on Monday called on the animal cats and dogs, especially the animal
Okay.
signature. And it's amazing what she was reading. And if you guys haven't watched that show, it's fantastic because
Mm.
she takes the aura pictures of certain animals and it's like how certain animals are better, with humans at certain things like the shape of the mouth and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the smaller ones, like we're talking now, are amazing as support animals. It's really cool.
Mm. Yeah, I
Really,
was
really
having a
cool.
bit of a teary moment on Saturday night because it was would have been Jacob's 26th birthday on Sunday. And because it was really coming up for me, lots of memories, and I was in that low moment. But then I looked at her and she looked up at me, and I just could feel the love towards her. And then I was starting to cry because I'd lost my son. It would have been his birthday. And that dog just switched. She was up on my shoulder just like she was hugging me like a human, and then the tail was going like 10 to dozen. So she'd gone from
Oh.
being asleep to really connecting with how I was feeling. Mum needs lots of love right now, and I'm just going to pour it into her. So she's tiny, but she's mighty, and I say that way. I felt that she really knew what was going on, that I had this immense grief sort of well up, and so it was really lovely. So yeah, she's my little pocket rocket. So yeah, so
Pocket rocket, I love
I
it.
get it.
I want
Yeah.
to, I want a pocket rocket too.
I carry around this handbag and everything. It's hilarious. So, But
I've got
yeah.
two very sassy, sassy felines. I mean, look at this one. I'm going to show you. Look at it. You see, it's like there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a bit comatose at the moment.
I have queens that I serve. No pocket
Yeah,
rockets.
yeah. No.
Anyway, it's wonderful. They are all
So,
wonderful.
yeah.
Kerri,
Well, we're
tell
on.
us about your sorry, tell us
No,
about your adoption journey. You also started by being a viewer on Ara, and I happened to see one of your comments
yeah,
and that you left on one of the shows, Australia shows we did back then. And I said, absolutely, we have to chat.
yeah,
So tell us a bit about, because you've had such a strong influence in the forced adoption
yeah,
industry. And
yeah,
we know that forced adoption is such a key for satanic ritual abuse as well. It's one of the first
yeah,
things that they
yeah.
that they do. So maybe you can just give us a little synopsis on
Well,
your
we call
journey.
it forced adoption, but it's just legalized child theft. And
Yeah.
that it's equivalent to the stolen generation, to the Indigenous children that was stolen and brutally separated from their families and their culture and their heritage. So we're talking about non-Indigenous children that were stolen from their mothers because their mothers were just single or unmarried, just they vulnerable, I should say. And so there were secret codes put on records, and they were funneled through the system, through the medical system, and through the church system under a very systemic system that kind of did it all in secret. And the mothers were held against their will in normally church run institutions and forced to work in laundries. And when they came to give birth, they didn't know that their baby was going to be taken, many of them, and they were drugged with heavy barbiturates and tied to beds, and babies were whisked away and hidden in the hospital, and babies were, just then handed out to anybody with very little screening or no screening at all. And we certainly know that babies were sold, and that specific babies were given to specific families for specific reasons. And in the research that I've been involved in linking it right back to, the elite and Malthuism and Darwinism and all this stuff, and Freudianism and the blank slate theory, it's all interlinked. So when I hear Doug tell his story, when I hear Rachel, I hear other survivors who aren't
directly linked to forced adoption, I hear now parallels in the sense of it was one big system that worked in different areas. And even when we talk about Cabbage Patch Kids, and I don't know if you've, I know you've interviewed a few people and I've come across more information that what were they called where they're like big atriums and they had all glass around them and they were saying that they what were they called where they sort of tried to say they're growing trees and whatever in there. It's now understood that because that that atmosphere gets things to grow bigger and quicker, it's quite possible they were used for babies because we talk about the Cabbage Patch Kids. Where did they come from? That was the environment in which they came from. So everything, the World's Fairs with all these glass domes, in a sense, it's all interlinked. So they've been doing it for a long time, but and we know that through we call it forced adoption. That's the more acceptable version by society, but it's actually just child theft. It happened all around the world, all at the same time, and it had an agenda. And the first one is to create trauma to that child and to that mother, and then it's to remove that ancestry, and because identity is very, very important,
Right,
and that
right.
identity stripped away. So you talk to any adopted person, they'll talk about that grief and loss around loss of identity. So I got involved because I was in my 30s when I started having flashbacks about my childhood. I'd blocked out all my abuse. I was adopted to horrific in a horrific, adoptive parents who he was a Freemason and he ran charcoal pits. So I was used as child slave labor and suffered a myriad of abuses. And through that process, I had realized that this just didn't happen to me. I went public with my story in 2009. And that's when I started a support group and helped lobby towards getting the truth out there through a Senate inquiry and state and federal apologies. It's still ongoing because they'll do a little bit, they'll apologize to a certain level and do a little bit, and then they try to bury it. And so the year just gone has been a very full on year for me in regards to talks with government and really tackling them. And we made them backtrack on information they tried to deny us. So there's a concerted effort to shut down adoptees' voices in particular, and particularly adoptees who have suffered abuse and trauma and mistreatment at the hands of adoptive parents. We currently have a government here in Queensland trying to bring back adoptions based on youth crime. So they're addressing youth crime by wanting to go back to this, oh, well, let's just grab all these kids out of foster care and throw them into adoption. Yeah. So I've actually had meetings with government. I had quite a number of meetings last year at government level with the Minister of Family Services and challenged them on many issues. We currently have an inquiry happening here until the end of the year to do with children in care and all the abuse. So if anybody suffered abuse in care, or in adoption, they want people to write in. So I've already done a submission. I think there's something like 50 pages of my submission, and I've challenged them all the way. So I'm in the middle of having a roundtable stakeholder meeting with them early this year. So not only do I support those survivors of forced adoption, but I actually speak to the very system that was a part of it and continues to try and fool everybody and go, we want to keep children safe. And no, it's not how it works out. So I've told them I want accountability and transparency, and we need all the recommendations fulfilled from the Senate inquiry, to which about 90% of them haven't been done. So that's where I'm at. It's been a very busy year, and it looks like it will continue to be busy. And more people affected by forced adoption reach out. I run two groups. One is #Adoption Redress Now, and the other one is my other one, which is Association for Adoptees. So that's what I do quietly in
Fantastic.
my life.
Mm. We will have all those details in the description area just for the viewers, where everyone can get hold of you guys. Um, but that's amazing, Kerri. I know that you have spent a lot of time in recent years getting that
Mm.
noticed at government level. I think it's amazing, and all of you, and in your own way, which is amazing to see as well. Doug, I would love to hear from you. I mean, Doug, one of the things I have to say, I still apologize because I was laughing. I said I can't actually believe how ludicrous or how insane what I'm hearing you say. I mean, you also grew up in this satanic family where, like, your parents were literally on a daily basis sort of trying to unalive each other.
Yeah.
That kind of became the norm in your life, and I know we were laughing. I still laugh about it because it's like, where does that even exist? I mean, which reality does that even exist? Like every day, they're just like trying to one
Well,
up each other on.
it probably wasn't that frequent because my father would just disappear sometime for months on end, and sometimes we'd have to escape him and go and live at relatives and things like that. But I wanted to pick up a little bit of what Kerri was saying, was my grandmother, when her mother died quite young and the father looked after the kids, and then the father died, so the auntie and uncle in Adelaide took her and a brother in, and the other brother went to another family member. And they adopted him, but she was basically used as house help. Now she fell in love with a guy and got pregnant, and then he died as well. And so they forcibly took her baby off her and gave it away to one of their friends,
Yeah.
on the pretext that you were talking about, Kerri. Yeah. And she managed to have contact with her. So her daughter grew up in high society because she's obviously given to a very, very wealthy Adelaide family. And her auntie and uncle who looked after her, they were the Loxtons, so they were a very powerful family in Adelaide. He was the chief veterinary surgeon of South Australia. Um, and so she had huge, huge PTSD issues as a result of all the trauma that she went through in her life. So yeah, it's quite prolific how often it's happened. And Rachel
Yeah.
being from South Australia and also a fairly close relative.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but for me, the last year has been, I'm glad it's over. It's been a rough year. So, my father died about a year and a half ago. So he was my main abuser. My mother died in July this year. So she lived 2 blocks from me. She followed me to the country. Um, she had a stroke. No one told me about it. When I found out about it, they'd spoken to the hospital, so the hospital refused to allow me to see her or even verify that she was there. 2 weeks later, she had another stroke and died. No one in the family told me she died. Um, and I found out from someone else who just rang up to see if I was okay. Then, when the funeral was organised, they hired security to make sure if I turned up, I was thrown out of the funeral. All of this is because I've become a whistleblower. So my
Mm.
family some members of my family. I have one person in my family who has, been amazing, but the other ones have treated me so appallingly. And these are people who I've had lovely relationships with, and I've messaged them saying, can we please speak about this? I've got all the evidence to show, what's being said about me. Is it true? Nothing. So it's, on top of that, I've had two rounds of death threats, which I've gone to the police about. And they just tried every way possible from someone in government in Sydney City Council. Um, all the evidence there, everything, the recordings of the gunshots, guys named the whole work. They just dragged it out and eventually said, we don't have enough evidence, we're closing the case. End of story. Refused to contact me anymore. I had identity fraud. The police dragged that out till the statute of limitations was over. We had mail being pinched, which was family, so that's no longer an issue. Um, and so on and so on. So it's been a very full on year. And at the same time, I dedicated myself to intense therapy, which has been brilliant. But like Rachel, I went through a lot of the MKUltra stuff. So a lot of the experimentation memories from the MKUltra have been suffocated to death. And resuscitated and drugged and all sorts of things. They've all been coming up, and it's been absolutely brutal because I've had to go back and feel what I've gone through. But the impact of going back and reliving the memory has been life-changing. So a lot of the PTSD issues I've had have disappeared, which has been incredible. So I've sort of dedicated myself to another year of it, and it's getting easier. When I first started this type of therapy, I could only last 15 minutes, whereas now I'm able to go for about 45. Um, but with my parents dying, my capacity's gone up because I don't have that child in me wondering whether they're going to do something to me. Because even recently there's been poisonings and all sorts of things. And since my mother died, my body started healing in a way that I've never been able to get it to heal. Um, Whether that's from the fact that I'm not
Wow.
being poisoned or trauma or whatever. But I've had lifelong skin issues and things like that. I'm always trying to get verification. When my father died, I wanted a DNA test to prove he was my father because um, all the health conditions, or most of the health conditions we have in our family, I've now realized are incest-based or typical of incest. Um, so it's trying to put those things together. And the more DNA tests people in the family have done, the more questions that have been raised, because, you know, people aren't who, according to DNA, they're not who we're told that they are, if that makes sense. So it's been a crazy year. I've basically don't have a family anymore, as I said, except one relative. But, it's what's important for me is following my intuition and doing what's right. And, I always believe that, because I've had a lot of people say some really appalling things about me this year, and Kerri and I were talking before we came on. Some of them have been fellow survivors. But I feel that, the universe is, when people say things about you, and I had an experience very recently about that, when they say things that aren't true, it's the universe saying to me, no, they're on a different path, you go on yours. And
Mm.
over Christmas, I've been doing a lot of clearing out of objects, people, different things like that, because I want to make room for good things to come into more good things in my life. So that's sort of been, yeah,
Wow.
been a bit of a roller coaster year.
Wow. How interesting. What you were saying about with your mum's passing and how your health has improved since then. I
Yeah,
mean, I think that is so telling, isn't it? The control that someone
yeah.
like that, your mother, obviously, every child wants the love and acceptance of their mother, the very being that birthed them, right? And
Yeah.
when that doesn't happen and it turns out for you the way it did, I can imagine what a trauma that must be and how just one trauma after the other over time would have created a myriad of health issues, actually. Um, and as you say, now that she's no longer there, it's like she's taken her bad karma with her. You're not taking that anymore, which is amazing. It's very
But
cool.
also,
I'm
I
very
don't
happy.
have to sit there wondering what she's going to do next,
Yeah.
and
Yes, the
how she's
power.
going to subvert me and things like that. At the same time, I was telling Rach, my brother's been and family been accessing, my testimonies and distributing them all to the family, extended family, to say, look, this is what a bad person is for saying all these things. Um, but it's about capacity. So when we go through huge amounts of trauma, we don't have a lot of capacity to do the things that normal people do who have happy,
Yeah.
healthy families. So with my
Mm.
father dying, my capacity increased a bit because back in the back of my head, I wasn't wondering whether he might turn up one day or something like that. And it was interesting when he died, I felt I was meant to go and see him. And again, his illness was hidden from me. But I felt I was meant to go and see him when I was told about it. And I went in there, and again, I was verbally abused by a family member. So I arranged with the hospital to come back when those family members weren't there. Because I thought, maybe my father might better tell something. And as I said, I wanted a DNA test. I organised with the hospital to come back at a safe time. I turned up at the hospital and got physically assaulted by that family member who now has an AVO against them. So I feel like I'm the only one in my family who's dealing with things. And as a result,
Yes.
because I'm dealing with things, I'm copying the anger and the trauma from them not doing it. But,
Yeah.
with mum dying again, my strategy was, I'm not going to go, I'm not confrontational in a sense, I'm not going to go and turn up at the funeral. If they don't want me there, I won't be there. So I went off and did something really amazing and focused on the good in life. But with her dying, she used to always come up and touch me on the forearm when she'd see me, which actually triggered me into a dissociative state. She knew what she was doing. And it's particularly my forearms is where I have massive rashes, and they're the ones now that are healing since she's died. And I've tried everything in my life. I've had the skin burnt off, numerous times. Um, and now without doing anything, they're just slowly healing, So
It's
it's
amazing.
fascinating.
That's why I say
Yeah,
your body's designed to heal itself. I love
it
that.
is.
It
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
really is. And this is
yeah,
it in action, just when you start feeling happy again, at peace, things start falling into place.
yeah,
So does your
yeah,
health.
exactly. Ah, okay, I've got room for
Yeah,
more good things now to replace what wasn't so good.
Yeah.
absolutely. Wow, I'm
I
really, really,
was
really
going to
happy to
say,
hear that.
I really identify with that, Doug, because I went public in 2009 with my story. My adoptive mother was still alive. Mind you, I had written to her and confronted her about all the abuse probably a couple of years before and said that I was going to go public. But I'd written a letter so my first letter before I went public was to the Minister of Child Safety. It was the first letter I'd ever written about my abuse to anybody. And I'd emailed it off and I thought I was fine. I went to watch a funny movie to distract myself. 2 hours later, I was in the hospital because I thought that something catastrophic was going to happen to me because I'd let the cat out of the bag and because my adopted mother was still alive. So even though you're an adult and even though you kind of go, yep, I can do this, is in the background or these parts, that have been so traumatized by these people just
Oh,
take over.
yeah,
So I dissociated really badly, became very unsafe and had to go to hospital and didn't cope well for a while. It wasn't until I got the letter back from, it was Phil Reeves, who was the minister at the time, who was very supportive and had given me, things that I could actually do. I found out later that that letter became a pivotal discussion I'd ever heard. So it had actually caused all the social workers to be in the same room with him. So that was really interesting.
wow.
So I totally get
Yeah,
that. Like you're an adult, but it does affect you in those ways and how
Totally.
triggering just trying to tell
well,
the
it's
truth.
a
And we're not
child.
just trying to
Yeah,
speak up in the sense of our families, but other survivors or other family members will attack you,
yeah.
like try to pull you down. So going
Oh,
public's not
totally. Yeah.
easy. And I'm interested to know how Rachel got on with going public
Oh,
and
very,
what
very much the
fallout you
same.
had.
Very much the same thing. Well, I was lucky in that I had two siblings. So I'm one of seven. I had two siblings who also remembered being abused. So that was something that was incredibly beneficial. Um, it's, oh my God, I won't go into it, but unfortunately, the other siblings, they are pitted against you. That's the whole thing that Freemasons do and all
Yes.
these scumbag perpetrators do is they make sure that you are isolated and you do not have siblings that can back you up. So I'm extremely lucky. I mean, my brother Andrew couldn't come on tonight. I wish he could, and he will at a later date. But tonight just wasn't going to work. But he's, he's brilliant. He's brilliant. And I'd love him to meet Doug as well, because Doug worked out that we're related. My maiden name is McIntyre. My brother's name's Andrew McIntyre. I thank God that I've got that support. But the other siblings, one in particular, got one of her supposed best friends, who wasn't really her best friend in high school. And I hope she watches this, because Claire, you were never Simone's best friend. So she's been after us for years, years. She's spent a good 10 years trolling us, or longer. And, we used to joke about her sitting on the toilet with a laptop on her lap, because she must have, because she was onto it. Every single thing we put out, she was onto it immediately. So I'm assuming she's being paid, because, I mean, she's certainly not paid attention to her own family. She's been too busy attacking ours, which is really interesting. So yeah, it's been very difficult. There's specific social media pages that are designed purely to attack me. And they used to get to me. Now I think, yeah, go for it, because I know I'm being effective. I know that they're going to spend that much time and energy. And my MKUltra main programmer is a big thing behind that. She's getting older and older, and this is what she's dedicating her time to. So she's busy doing that, harassing me. She's not abusing any other children, I hope. Yeah.
Are we allowed to name drop or not yet about the
with that one, she's very litigious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
I was going to say, I'm going to grab my microphone a bit closer. This is what I'm going to say. Hear this. Anyone out there that's given us curry about going public for any reason, small, large, or big, we're not going anywhere, right? The louder you get, the louder we're going to get.
Absolutely.
Because I've had something huge happen to me at the end of this year, and I'm going to put it out there, and people might be a bit aghast, and I can't go into too much, but I've been referred to the Human Rights Commission. There's a complaint being made against me in the Human Rights Commission by another survivor.
Wow.
And
initials
AS,
Kerri?
But for what?
No,
How? Based on what?
I shouldn't say too much.
No, don't say too much. Sorry.
Well, okay. So I'll try and get around this, but this particular person, I brought it up before in your shows, Chantel, that adoptees were told to F off, that the Senate inquiry wasn't about them. And you remember me saying that? That's what I experienced early on. Well, it's grown legs, because this same person we had to have a vote about whether they were on the stakeholder committee or not. And I voted no and gave my reasons, and it got back to her. And even though it was supposed to be confidential, and the things have been twisted as it's gotten to her. So because of her own behavior, and because I hold my ground and speak the truth and I don't attack people, she believes that she's being unduly discriminated against, and that slander and defamation, I've said slanderous and defamatory things about her on Facebook since 2012, and which isn't true, because anybody knows me, like Chantel, I don't do things like that. Everybody knows I don't do things like that. So I've had to prepare for it. She's actually mentioned me in a book, not by name, but I'm identifiable in her book that she wrote, and it's not even true. So that came out last year, and I'm not sure what it's about. I think it's about the fact that as a survivor and an adoptee, I would not bugger off. That's pretty much it. Sit down, go away, shut up. So this person didn't like the fact that I didn't do what I was told, and they're not an adopted person, right? They are a mother who was forced to give their baby up for adoption. And basically, if they're not running the show, their name's not on it, and they're not at the front of it, everybody else is pathetic and whatever. So there's a whole heap. I don't want to say too much because I'll be very interested to see if the Human Rights Commission actually pick it up, but I've prepared for it. But yeah, that's what I mean. Like there are survivors attacking survivors. And I've said from the very beginning that we need to work together, not against each other, because in working against each other, the government then likes it that way because
Exactly, divide and
we're
conquer.
weakened. Our work is weakened that way. But like I didn't disappear back when it first happened in 2012, I'm not going anywhere. They can throw all the mud they like and try, but I'm not going anywhere. So yeah, so here I sit, in my little world doing my work. Apparently, I'm a very, very bad person. So you shouldn't be hanging around with me.
Proud to be hanging around with you.
I'm just going to
It's
turn the
more
lights
to it,
on.
but I can't say more. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. But you know, I'm not. Apparently, it's a common thing that survivors who do put their head down and do make headway and articulate themselves very well and hold themselves in a, I would say, an honourable manner. There are certain survivors who will attack them severely, and I know that survivors are often infiltrated by nefarious people or organisations that want to pull the whole voice down, and they don't know they're being used. That could be happening in this way. I'm not sure. All I know is that this has been a problem since I started lobbying, and it's just got very bad very quickly, but that's okay. So thought
Yeah, I
I'd
think
mention that.
also,
So that's
yeah, I think, Kerri, we live in a slave system. Everyone's in debt. And so people have got to do what they're told, particularly in government. Because the issue I've had is I've gone to the ombudsman, like, I've had local council staff park across my driveway with trailers when the street's empty. And then when I go out and ask them what they're doing, so it's illegal. I've been, very badly and, abused with vulgar language. I go to the council and they just ignore me, basically. I go to the Human Rights Commission. Again, they just try and find a loophole to write it off. I've, you know, with all my complaints against the federal police, the New South Wales police, all the different levels, and I just do it because I want to create the paper trail. But in government, they just protect each other. The government's, become this monster,
yeah. This isn't a government person though. Yeah, this is yeah, but
I
they
agree,
seem to
yeah.
think that yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just really sad, and I get it because I've had to deal with government in this process, and I'm watching them protect themselves rather than kind of stand beside me in a sense. They've got their lawyers, and they say, well, we can't talk to you now because they're in their own protective mode, and so I'm now seeing a reaction by certain services to which I've worked closely with for a number of years take a very decided action that to me tells me I'm not safe. And that was I ever safe with these people? I'll still, it's just made me see things in a different way where I will address it in a different way. You've got to, like I'm not naive in the sense of government or those that work for government. People are there for a reason. I will continue to speak up for those affected by forced adoption to those people, but I don't go in there with what they call rose-colored glasses that just because you're in government, you're sitting in front of me, that your intentions are all good. Because we all know, like your show is very clear on things in the background, and we know with Rachel, your stories and stuff, and people in high positions of power, what they do behind closed doors. So
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. I mean, I take my hat off to you because you're actually being effective. Because it can get so frustrating. You can just think, where is this going? Is it actually getting anywhere? And I did, like I said, getting the victim of crime payment meant a lot to me, even though it was a very small amount of money, because 20 years of lobbying and pressing and doing everything that I needed to do. But there's so many different versions of what you have described with the forced adoptions. There's that, there's state sanctioned trafficking, which you mentioned before, where they will just take the child and take them out of the system and just adopt them out, which is horrific. There's also the ones that don't even have the paperwork. I mean, one of my family members, and speaking about South Australia's family cult, I'll call them a family member, had a baby farm going on. She had all these very underage girls who were always pregnant as her maids in her home, and we weren't allowed to interact with them. They were always miserable, crying, heavily pregnant. And then one came forward a long time ago, and hopefully my brother will talk about this at some point, and she described that she'd had her baby taken from her. Now, no doubt the child wasn't even documented. This is an underage girl.
Yeah.
It's horrifying.
When was this, Rachel? This is terrible. Where
This
was
in the
this?
70s and in the 80s. So it was still
In
happening
Australia?
then in South Australia. Yeah, in Adelaide.
You know what's interesting? I don't know if you guys have watched my interview with Guy Anderson. He's the Tartaria, and this past week we just did a show on the Cabbage Patch Kids, actually. Which, gosh, that guy's got knowledge. His information is supreme, and I really want to say, please go and watch it. I'm doing a series with him as well, because especially when it comes to the orphanages and orphan trains, etc. He said to me, I said to him, right, take us back to how come suddenly nothing and then so many kids populating? Well, firstly, the wars wiped out the majority of the male population. 80% of the male population was wiped out by wars. So women, there was something called the Lunacy Act.
Yes.
Women were not considered to be able to take care of themselves after their husbands were killed. So what did they do? They stuck the women in asylums and they took their children. And these children were millions of them, from what I'm hearing, as well as the cloned kids, the Cabbage Patch Kids, right? But he also explains where the word Cabbage Patch comes from. It's actually some word for transporting, or transported, basically traffic kids. But obviously with their postcards and all of their stuff, they would have also put out a certain narrative out there. Very, very fascinating. But basically what he's saying is that, and then those women that were put into the asylums were then used as breeders as well to repopulate the earth. So a lot of the kids were orphans, forced adoptions, stolen from their parents through the Lunacy Act. There were definitely the cloned kids as well. And he speaks about why a lot of like the cloned kids, they don't have the memory, right, that we have of our past, of our DNA, our roots, where we say, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. The clone kids, and they're all Caucasian kids. All of them are Caucasian babies. So the white population, the white population was repopulated. And that's when history was pretty much rewritten, because the Cabbage Patch Kids were all white babies. And they're the ones, when you look in government and stuff, and that's why you look in government, etc., at these soldiers, these little slaves, these little puppets. I mean, the clones do have souls and consciousness, but not as deep or as strong as obviously someone with the original. It's like a copy. So it's going to be a little bit faded. It's not going to have that strong sense of identity. So they are much more pliable. How fascinating is that?
Yeah.
Well, it's when I don't know if I watched that show, but I watched another one which said something very similar. And when I heard it, and I heard the structure of it, particularly the Lunacy Act, well, when they took 250,000 non-Indigenous children in Australia alone, let alone it was happening in Canada and Ireland and England, everything, under the same context, that if you were single and wanted to keep your baby, you were deemed neurotic. So it was just the same game plan, but used at a different level. So no longer, because remember, all the asylums are gone. How do we still, in essence, keep this narrative going? How do we continue the trauma? So when the doctors were interviewed at a conference, I remember that they stated that they were the top of society. They were deemed, it's in their own in their own conference that it was recorded, that they were deemed kind of like the elite, and anybody underneath them were deemed less than. And that single mothers, when it came to the law, they said, ignore the law does not apply. So they did the same thing on a mass scale at the same time through forced adoption in many different countries. And mostly, that's right, white babies were stolen, because under former forced adoptions, Indigenous people only made up 3% of the 250,000.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah.
but,
But, but they would have also been used for trafficking, though, if we look at already. I mean, because if we look at the 4th of July, 17 something, that's really the Freedom Day of America, but really that's when the New World Order started. That's actually the day that the New World Order came in. The 4th of July, 17, whatever it was. So this is 250 years this year of the New World Order being in power. So they've had technology for cloning, for connecting to whatever alien species. I believe it's probably the Anunnaki that are currently ruling and controlling this planet, and they do so through the Rothschilds. That's my opinion. And obviously everything is a derivative of that. But absolutely, this cloning and space technology timelines has been a big thing for them that they've wanted to implement here. And unfortunately, the kids, we've suffered, our children have suffered. We as kids were once kids too, you know. It's very
Well, the
interesting.
only way to gain control, well, the only way to gain control of society is to break it. And they can't be seen to be doing it so overtly, like openly. So they've got to do it secretly, and they've got to do it in ways that they've got to create the trauma. They've got to, and what they've done and what you can see happening in different countries is removing the identity of each country by causing this mass migration of different cultures into the country, so that there is no country that is identifiable by its race anymore. You look at parts of England and other countries, like they've been so infiltrated by immigrants. It doesn't look like England anymore. It doesn't look like, and so the whole plan is sure that happens.
You know what's
So they can't do it
fascinating?
before. Yeah, go on.
But you know what's fascinating about that, which I think it was also Guy, I think it was Guy that we were also having that conversation with, which makes perfect sense. If we look the last few years, how there's been a big infiltration of foreign young men of military going age into other countries. Why they're doing that is because they're actually turning those guys into their military operators. Why? Because when they need to enforce the law, it's much easier for a foreign entity to enforce the law against another nation than what it is against their own nation. So they will have African people enforcing the law on white people. Hello, they'll have Mexico, whatever nation has been undermined in the past, as they are now using them to enforce the law because there's no empathy there, and especially when it comes to vaccines and these things, and because they feel nothing to haul someone that is your enemy off to have a
Mm.
jab. As long as my mother in my country is not having it, I'll make
Yeah.
sure
Mm.
that these farangs are type thing. It's actually
Mm.
scary when you think about how contrived this whole
Mm.
division and conquer has been. And it's begun by
Yeah.
dissociating kids and separating them
Yes.
from their mothers and their parents. That's the scary part.
Yeah.
That really, really
Mm.
is the scary part. And Doug,
Yeah.
it just makes
Yeah.
so much sense what you were saying earlier, Doug, with your mom. And we
Yeah.
look at how mothers have been used. I mean, it breaks my heart to see how they've used mothers and turned their mothers against their kids.
Yeah.
Because
But
there
it's a
is no greater
strategy.
betrayal for a child than that. Sorry, Doug.
No, I said, well, it's a strategy and also to create
Mm.
Manchurian candidates. But you look at things like in Canada, where you've got the euthanasia bill, 96%, I was reading this the other day, the people being euthanized are white people.
And veterans
Yeah.
actually,
And so
depressed
they're
veterans.
specifically, yeah. And it's coming
Oh.
out, people who are having their organs removed. They're not dead.
Oh,
They're keeping
Mm.
them alive. So it's amazing how many people are doing research on these things and how much is getting exposed, but it's horrific. But as you're saying, it's a very concerted, planned thing for everything that's happening. Like I look at the UK and, as you say, they're importing all the young military aged men there, you know, but now they want all the white young men of the UK to go off into fight a war in Ukraine. So what does that do? That leaves all
Or,
foreigners in
or
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
doesn't that just reinforce what I've said? Because now
that's what I'm
your
saying.
own
Yeah,
military guys are fighting in a foreign country,
yeah,
and you have a foreign military in your country.
yeah.
It's it's gonna break people. That's what it is. It breaks down our
Yeah.
societies.
Yeah.
Well,
We
we've got to
become victims of ourselves. It really, really is actually very sad.
stand up en masse and say no to these corrupt governments.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think what I'd love for us to do in the future is actually organize a round table with some Canadians as well.
Yeah,
And for
Oh,
us to
yeah.
actually sit with some Canadians and see how the Commonwealth, because really the British Commonwealth, and what he reckons, Tony Blair is the worst. Tony
Mm.
Blair. And if you think about it, the British Commonwealth is behind the biggest evils on this planet. Think about that. We're looking at
yeah.
all sort and these Brits sitting there, all prim and proper. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, hey, listen, I've got more British blood in me than anything else. Okay, so I'm allowed to say that. Um, it's like they sit there having colonized half of the world and stolen so much that doesn't
Mm.
belong. I don't even want to
yeah.
think about what they've done here in Africa and especially South Africa. We've been, as we've discovered, but think about what could be happening in the UK, actually.
And that's all
British.
by design again, isn't it? Because then you've got all those
Exactly.
people who've been colonized who hate the white people who've come in so that they can have their color revolution now when we should be pointing the finger at the Soroses and the Rothschilds and the Windsors, and if any of them are actually even left, all those people, but instead we're pointing the finger at each other. It's
Yeah.
clever.
Exactly.
It's just the
It,
same playbook over and over again. It gets a bit boring. It's the same thing. They can't think of anything new.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah. They've got a plan and they're trying to stick to it. That's about it. But it gets interrupted every now and then and things get exposed and yeah, you can see it, like unless you're hiding under a rock, you can see what's happening. The more that survivors are speaking out, the more people come on shows like Chantel's and and people watch enough of them, they start to piece it together, and they can even look at their own lives. Like by myself listening to others like yourself who aren't affected by forced adoption, but just your stories and their own have made me connect all the dots, to know that it's all interlinked.
mm,
They've all had
exactly.
little, no. And most
Exactly.
people, when you talk to them about adoption, it's really been sold as this, beautiful thing, so loving, and that the adoptive parents are, so would love a child that's not their own,
Generous,
grown up on some
generous.
pedestal. And when you start digging and you find out that they paid for the child, and they lobbied the government, and did they treat the child well, and then when they die, they don't leave any money to the child. And then you got to look at Hollywood and all the children that are adopted, and the ones that all the children that are being where they change their sex and everything like that. Like, it's just incredible. So
Crazy.
it's in our faces, and the way that it's been sold. And and if you're not adopted, how many, like Doug, were a part of the system, in the sense of what his parents and his mother did, and the abuse
Yeah.
within those, families, the ones
I,
that aren't affected by adoption. Like,
But for a lot of
I
people,
can't,
I'm finding, it's too confronting. I've had friends say to me in the last year, we find what you've gone through is not believable. And I'm glad they're being honest, but
yeah,
Yeah.
people don't want
yeah,
to believe. They want the
They don't want to
Pollyanna
believe.
belief
Exactly.
system about the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
You know,
it's
yeah,
absolutely that cloning. I can't believe it. Not looking
yeah,
deeper. It's exactly what we were saying, and it's so true. And I think sometimes it is probably worse to have your own mother perpetuate those kind of atrocities on you than what it is to have your adopted mother, actually. Because at least when your adopted mother is doing that, you can think, okay, well, my own mother would not be doing this, right? But when your own mother is doing this over and over, and your own father, and that's
yeah.
reaffirmed day in and day out to you, I mean, how
Well,
much
yeah.
more do you want to torture a child?
Well,
Mm.
I forced my mother to have a DNA test, not physically or anything, to prove that she was my mother, because I was hoping that she wasn't. And when it came out that she was, she said, "Well, you're disappointed, aren't you?" And I said, "Well, do you blame me?" Because it's like, why would you want someone who targets you like that, natural or adopted? And I got to the point in life where I actually realized it was good that we didn't get on and we never got on, because I think the damage would have been more if I'd been close to her. And in the cults, I have memories. And Rachel can probably back me up on this, where, they put us through this extreme neglect. So when they abuse us, we have a natural inkling then to hopefully want the abuse. That's their strategy. It didn't work with me. I mean, they repulsed me. Like, when my father would sexually abuse me as a kid, it was like love bombing as part of the abuse. So then as a child, you think, pedophilia is a good thing rather than a bad thing. And as I said, it repulsed me every time he did things. But that's the way they operate. When I remember a couple of ceremonies where children or adults were murdered, we were normally put with them before they were murdered so that we had a bond with them. Because obviously, I had virtually no bonds in my immediate family except my older brother, because we went through similar things. But then they would put you, because as a child you're starving, craving affection, or at least attention, and they would put you with someone so you got the bond, and then they would kill them to make that trauma to you even greater. And that's one of their strategies. You know about this, Rach?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. There was a child that my father kept under the house for weeks, if not
Yeah.
months, a very long period of time. I'd take her meals. Just a horror show. Um, and that's, and also
What?
what you were saying before about, they'll abuse you and then they'll expect some sort of bond. So my father he ran me over with his car. I could see he was looking at me. I was about 5 or 6 years old, just prior to going to school. So I guess he probably wanted to get rid of me before I could blab to a teacher or something. And then, afterwards, because he didn't actually manage to run me over, he just drove the car over the top of me. He didn't hit me with the wheels. He whispered to me while I was sitting on his lap while he was crying, whispered to me that, he wanted to kill me, but he couldn't because he loved me too much. And that was just the way it was. That's what he did. And my mother's backed me up on that. She was there. She's written it in statutory declaration. That was part of my VOC claim, that she was there. She was there as he was pulling me out from underneath the vehicle. But she didn't take me to the hospital. She did the dishes while he was holding me on his lap on the couch. And I don't blame her for that. She was very easily hypnotized. And I don't hate her. But it's just, this is the control that my father had in the family.
But
He
it
could
still
do that.
affected you at the
She would go off and do what she did, because her coping mechanism was to clean or to cook.
And it still affected you as a child, Rach, because I remember when I went through these near-death experiences, it was like a programming that you're worthless.
Mm.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing like being given away at birth. Well, not given away, but taken at birth and being told you were just given away. And that the adopted parents just took you out of pity because you were so ugly, nobody else wanted you, to make you feel worthless. That's what I was told. No, I was told that my mother tried to abort me and wanted to have an abortion with me. So really instilling that I was nothing to my biological mother. And then told that my mum was 16 and died giving birth to me because she tried to abort me because of complications. So that's what I grew up with. And it was like telling me, but then pass the peas. So making it very normal, and I'd say you guys experience it too, is the fact that it's so abnormal. And the way that they treated it, though, it's like, this is where your brain gets really screwed up in a sense. Like, they make it normal when it is very abnormal, and you mask, or you go into this space that is like, any other kid, if they walked into that, would just be horrified. You sit there and you take it and go, oh yeah, okay. Like, I don't know, like, because I've heard your story.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree totally.
yeah,
I used to go and stay at friends' places in high school, and their parents treated me beautifully, like a lot of my teachers at school did. And that showed me the vast contrast between my family and others, because we didn't have guests in our family. We never had people over for dinner. No one came to the house. It was like this closed cell. But it is, you as a child, you assume these beliefs are normal when they could be more abnormal.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a hard one because and I know, like, in telling my story, I wouldn't break down and cry. I just sort of tell it matter of factly. And you're kind of watching the reaction of other people who are like, what the hell? Like, this is just horrific. And they're wondering why you're not having a reaction, because you were trained to grow up. You go, this is normal. This was normal behavior. Like, you don't react to this. Like, so it's crazy. And it's things like, my adoptive father suffocated me on a regular basis, and I thought I was going to die a few times. And same thing, my adoptive mother would just turn her back and wash the dishes while I'm screaming out for help. So it's just crazy stuff what we've grown up with, isn't it? It's insane.
But you look at our families and the patterns between them all. It's like they operate out of a playbook.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely. So gruesome.
The thing I came across recently, getting all the death certificates and birth certificates and things like that with my parents' deaths. And on my mother's side, they come from the Gordons, which is a very wealthy bloodline in Australia. Well, that's been scrapped off the records now. And then my mother always claimed that she was pregnant and forced to get married. And so with my older brother, but when I went through and did all the dates, my older brother was born 2 years later. So was my mother really pregnant? And did she have a child? Because there's no child on the on her death or birth certificate. So again, it's the more you dig there, more of these questions.
Wow.
Well, I definitely going to be doing some more digging with you guys. So, um, the more we dig, the more we realize what is there and what there still is. Um, I think for me, what's important is the awareness that we create around this, and obviously to prevent any child from having to go through this again. If there's one
Mm.
child that is protected, then mission accomplished. But I think for all of us sitting here, each one of you have really experienced hell on earth the way that
Mm.
I can see it. I can't imagine any human being experiencing anything worse. Um, Everyone in different ways, but hell has many platforms, it would seem. So thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your story. And I would love to maybe do this on a monthly basis, that we can get together and catch up and talk about Australia. And I'd love to get some Canadians as well on
Mm.
some of the shows and talk about what's happening there. And I'm sure you'll find some correlations also with
Oh.
South Africa, you know.
Mm.
Um, I know, it seems to be um, Australia was a lot of parents involved as well. And I speak to a lot of the Montauk survivors, and it's like with Chris Latera, his mother signed him up with the CIA. He was
Mm.
like, they were being signed up, these kids going to these job fairs. You want to be a spy, you want to be this, cool little 6-year-old boys. And so they were signed up. Parents agreed. Then they get the father a job far away from home, where it's just the mom, works in the same building or the same floor, same offices as the CIA guys. And of course, this whole thing is contrived. So the whole Montauk thing, she gets invited to these dues, father not there. They completely pulled the wool over. And then they made these kids like, you're the one, you're the best. You're not allowed to tell anyone. These are secret projects. So it's amazing how, and yet these kids were not spared from any torture. Make
Yeah,
no
yeah,
mistake.
yeah,
The
No.
torture they were spared from, yes, was probably the torture at home from the
yeah.
parents. But it's almost like the parents were blind to what these kids were going through. So the parents were taking them to the facilities where they were in the pool on LSD. They were being dosed LSD, microdosed, to go into the Montauk chair and all sorts of things. So again, on a whole different level, it's like the abuse knows no limits.
Mm.
So they'll gaslight kids into anything, into believing you're better than others or worse than others, but you're not normal.
Mm.
They'll
Yeah.
you're not you're either worse than you're the worst scum of the earth, so don't you dare try and question, or you're so
Mm.
superior you're not allowed to tell anyone what's going on
Mm.
because you're the future CIA spies.
Yeah.
And it's like a badge of honor to be able to come through this torture. I mean, how
Yeah, it's very similar to
crazy.
the Monarch programming. Yeah.
That is.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that is the Monarch programming.
Or
Um,
Monarch and
that,
Montauk, but yeah, it's the same thing,
yeah,
isn't it? So,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, but Montauk more the chair, but I think they would have had
yeah,
to go through the Monarch programming
yeah.
to get there because, the more you speak to these kids, they were also in different regions and they
Mm.
were doing different projects in different regions. And then there'd be winners in different regions who would then get sent to different projects and things again. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Mm.
Anyway, I would just like to say thank you again, and just to let all you viewers know that all the details for Rachel, Kerri, as well as Doug are in the description area. So Rachel, I'm just going to go around again. Anything you would like to say where people can get a hold of you, anything you want to advertise right now, or just something in closing as well? What do you have to say to the viewers?
Thank you again for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure to meet Kerri for the first time, and it's always good to see you, Doug, as always. And yeah, people can find me on most socials. I've just had my website revamped, so if you go on my website and it looks completely different, that's why. Dear friend Billy has
Nice.
revamped it for me. So yeah, I do psychic courses, I give readings, and I keep talking loud.
Loud and proud. We love it. Kerri.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's been lovely meeting Doug and lovely
Thanks,
meeting
Kerri.
Rachel. First time with you guys. Thank you. It's lovely, and thank you for inviting me back, Chantel. Where can I be found? Oh my goodness. So hashtag adoption redress now is open to anybody affected by forced adoption and anybody who supports people affected by forced adoption. So you can join. Um, Association 4, so it's numeral 4, adoptees, is only for adopted people, and it is a private group to keep people safe. So you can say whatever you like in there and know that you're safe to say that. I've been creating songs so about forced adoption, so you can find me on Bandcamp. So if you put my name in Kerri Saint bandcamp.com, you'll find 3 particular songs about forced adoption. And I've been writing songs on AI. I don't know if people are familiar with it in your country. It's called Suno, SUNO. So I've actually created, I think it's about 5 songs now, and they tell my story of forced adoption in there. And those songs are actually also being used at anniversary events like at Parliament and politicians and people affected. You can grab them, you can play them wherever you like if you feel it helps tell your story of what you've experienced. So I think you can follow me there on keris.one and you'll find some of my songs there. And I'm going to continue to create songs. The plan is I'm creating my own YouTube channel and incorporating my songs in it and my story of forced adoption, but doing it kind of like an audio book. So that's my plan for 2026. So we'll see if that happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, I've been busy writing songs. It's been a lovely creative space, and so yeah, you
Nice.
can follow me there.
Wonderful.
Thank
Nice.
you.
Awesome. Yay.
I'm
Kerri,
not.
thank you, Doug.
That's okay. Yeah, I'm not much on the internet at the moment because I keep getting banned and throttled and censored and everything else. So it's just I'm really only on X at the moment, and they keep sending me warnings and all sorts of things. So I'm hoping to get some things back up online this year. I've also had family writing to people who have hosted me, telling them that I'm a compulsive liar, and things like that. So it's sort of an interesting stage for me at the moment. So that's where I'm just trying to work out. I want to get the story out, but I've got to find places where I can do it where I'm not going to be shut down all the time. So it's just I don't want to do all this time on things and then to be, censored. And I've had that happen repeatedly. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure the way forward on that. Currently looking at Linux and different things like that and maybe setting up, my own platforms. But it's just, ever since I started speaking out against a lot of things that's happened. So I'm just in that stage of trying to work out the best way forward.
Well, you must
Wonderful.
be the
Well,
one
no
doing.
doubt.
I was going to say, you must be the only thing doing something right if he keeps getting kicked off somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I know I'm
exactly.
above target, but yeah, I've had, previous governments take out my websites with denial of service attacks. When I've written to royal commissions, my things get
Yeah.
censored. It's just this constant thing. And I say to friends, if what I'm saying was a bunch of lies, they wouldn't bother. But the fact that they go
Yeah.
to so much expense and so much time to
Yeah.
stop me is quite incredible. But the thing that concerns me is with my family and the amount of evil that they've done. You know, I know everything I've got is being monitored and that, and I'd hate to think that people would try and contact me and wouldn't get through because I always try and respond to everything.
Yeah.
Well, we will keep walking this path, and day by day, bit by bit, we'll crack it open again for the light to just consume. Thank you, everybody. I really, really, really appreciate you. And we will be back again in a couple of weeks for sure, where we're sharing more on what's happening in Australia and just, yeah, connecting some dots. And as I said, looking forward to definitely having some of the Canadians on with us as well. It'll be great to see how things cross over. So take care. God bless you all, and I shall see you very, very soon.
Thank
Until
you,
then,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Jerry
Thank you, Rachel.
buys.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Chantal.
Thanks, guys.